Good morning and welcome again to another episode of The Legal Zone, where we tackle injustice. Good morning, Mr. Salatti.
Good morning, Solon. Glad to be back again.
Good morning, Dr. Cheney.
Good morning.
And we have a special guest with us today. His name is Antoine Bruce, and we will get into his story in a hot second. But first, as usual, let's get into some legal definitions. The first one I want to start with is a term or word that I'm sure every listener has heard before. In fact, I guarantee every listener has heard of this word before. Stalking. What is it? Let's talk about stalking, because I'm sure everyone has heard something about it. Stalking is, first and foremost, it's a crime in most states, all 50 states and DC. But what is it really? Stalking, remember, every crime has to have elements. And if you don't have all the elements, you don't have the crime. Stalking is the intentional act. Above everything else, the act has to be intentional. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Stalking is the intentional act of behaving in such a way that you, the alleged stalker, know or should know, is the intentional act of behaving in such a way that you know or should know that your actions will cause fear or seriously alarm another person. That's stalking. Also, it has to be more than one act. So if I'm walking by Dr. Cheney's house and I stop and I look through her window and then I walk away and she's inside of her window and she could see me looking at her, can she go call the cops and say he's stalking me? Well, if it was just one time, obviously, no. But what if every morning I walk by and I stop and I look at the window like this, and then I keep walking and she's on the inside and she's feeling fearful? Is that stalking? Well, the big thing is, do I know or should I know that she is fearful by me doing this? I don't want to get too much into stalking because it's a small part of our story today. But these are things that you have to ask yourself. So if I'm walking by her window and I stop every time and I look, and every time I do that, she's freaking out. Why is this guy looking through my window? He's stalking me. How do I know that she's even on the other side? It could be that I'm seeing my reflection, and every time I walk by her window, I'm saying, I'm gaining weight. I'm getting some grays. I'm looking at myself. I don't even know she's there. One way you could prove if a person knows that your behavior is causing them fear, tell them. If she opened her door and said, hey, every time you walk by, it's freaking me out. Are you looking in my window? Now I know that my behavior is causing her fear. If I continue doing it, then maybe that could be stalking. So remember, for stalking, it has to be an intentional act that you know or you should know is causing another person to be fearful, disturbed, frightened, or seriously alarmed. And it has to be more than one time. There's another word I want us to talk about. Retaliation. Now, we all know what retaliation is. But most states, including DC, has a law that prohibits retaliation. But what exactly is that? Retaliation is the act of retaliating against a person because that person opposed your unlawful practice. So let's digest this really quick before we go into our story. It is unlawful for any person, usually a person in a position of power, but doesn't necessarily have to be, to retaliate against you because you called out something unlawful that they were doing. Whistleblowers, we've heard of that. And there's laws that protect whistleblowers. Whistleblower is somebody who blows the whistle, makes it known of some illegal act that somebody's doing. Well, if you're working at a workplace and you find out that one of your employers or a boss is sexually harassing someone, or maybe it's even you, and you tell, that's the unlawful practice, and then you tell that person's superior. Now, if that person comes back at you and causes some sort of act to get you in trouble, then that's retaliation. And the law says you can't do that. All right, we're good on stalking and retaliation. Now comes our special guest for today, Mr. Antoine Bruce. Mr. Bruce, how are you?
I'm well, holding on. Thank you.
Holding on. I'm glad that you're here because the world really needs to know and understand your story and what could happen when someone feels the need to let others know of a wrongful act that's being committed against them. Tell us your story.
So, well, I was previously homeless. Back in 2018, going to around, but during the time of my homelessness, I was going to various shelters. One of them happened to be New York Avenue Men's Shelter here in Washington, D.C. on New York Avenue in Northeast. The shelter has rules, regulations, policies, and procedures that they consider us clients of the shelter have to follow by. While I was in the shelter, I was getting into it with a lot of other residents because they wasn't following the rules. They was doing stuff like coming into the room I was assigned to, stealing my personal property. They were doing stuff like when I'm going to the bathroom trying to brush and wash my face, they would be at the sink area naked, partially naked, washing their genitals and stuff like that. And it's a rule you're not supposed to do that.
Is this men and women or just men?
Just men. It was all men's shelter.
Okay.
So they'd be doing stuff like that. And you have a shower directly behind you, you know? So in my mind, I'm like, why are you at the sink washing your body and it's a shower like right there behind you?
Right.
What else? A lot of them had bed bugs on them. A lot of them didn't want to take showers. One incident, I was using the bathroom and I discovered a guy peeking in the stall at me while I'm using the bathroom. So it was different issues going on, to which I was bringing it up to the security guards and the supervisors and other staff members of the facility.
So there's security guards that they live there, or they just come on shift. So how does that work?
Yeah, they work there and they come on shifts.
Okay.
Yeah, daytime, evening time, midnight shift. So I was reporting this to all of them. A lot of them, they wasn't doing nothing about it. So me getting frustrated and stuff like that, I wind up getting into physical altercations with the other residents that was stealing my property. I call exposing themselves in the bathroom, everything. And each incident I get in, the security guard will call the police on me. try to make it seem like I was the instigator. They put handcuffs on me and detain me till the police come. The police, it was either video footage or the individuals who I got into it with would tell their side of the story and tell the truth about it. And the police will order the security guards, hey, remove the handcuffs from him because he's not in fault. When I seen,
So the security guards had the authority to put you in cuffs?
yes,
Okay.
I'm guessing. I'm guessing they did
All right.
as a means of detaining a person. I don't know. I didn't feel as though they had to put me in cuffs because I wasn't hostile or nothing towards nobody. So when I assume, okay, this is going to be what they're doing. You know, they're going to keep calling the police on me whenever incident occur when it's not even my fault. And I done try to go to them and complain about the stuff. So what I started doing, I started filing complaints against the staff, against the supervisor and them for not doing their job. And as a result of me filing.
Now, who would you file these complaints with?
So they have they hold grievance procedural format. So I'm guessing it's supposed to be with Catholic Charities, but it's an internal grievance process. So I had to give my grievance to the staff supervising them that work in the shelter.
Okay. So you made some complaint with a supervisor within the shelter about these other staffs?
Individual residents that I was getting into it with, what was going on, property being stolen, all of that.
Did you make any complaints against the security officers?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you made these complaints and then what?
So what I was doing, because I kind of got a knowledge of how to file complaints and stuff and mentality of how people think. So what I was doing, I was making personal copies of my complaints before I actually turned them in to the staff that worked there, because I assume, hey, they will be throwing them away because I'm filing against their co-workers, friends, you know, they're friends. They socialize with each other. They do this and that. So I was making personal copies of my complaints. Also, they have numbers whereas though it's like a complaint hotline. So you have the community partnership, I think they call, that you can call and complain if you feel as though the grievance process is not going well, or if you know something like that. They also have DHS that has a complaint hotline. So I was also calling both of them hotlines and
DHS is the Department of Health and Services, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I was also calling both of them hotlines and complaining about the different stuff that I was going through. They only looked into like maybe 1 or 2 incidents, and that was regarding disability, my disability. So once I filed the complaints against the security guard, because one of them was harassing me.
How?
So they do room checks to check on a person's health and welfare. So this one particular female security guard, she would go by each room the days that she worked, open up your door and yell, "Is everybody alive?" and then slam the door. She never look in the room or nothing. She just opened the door, "Is everybody alive?" and slam the door. So I tolerated it for a while. After some time, you know, it's waking me up out of my sleep. I'm getting frustrated. I need sleep because I barely sleep a lot anyway. So enough anyway. So I said something to her one day. She did. I'm like, hey, can you not do that? You know, you waking a person up. What is you doing? And she was like, I'm doing my job. I'm like, you're not doing your job. You're not even looking in the room. I said, if you keep on doing that, I'm gonna file a complaint against you. She said, I don't care. Go ahead. So I wound up filing a complaint against her. Next thing I know, each time she worked, she would say something to me or, you know, just try to antagonize me. I will file a complaint each time she do something that I could, if I remember that, I file it. So I got like maybe 3 complaints against her. Also,
Do you remember what else she would do?
So one incident, she tried to start a fight between me and a resident. The resident, I was in line for food. One of the staff that work in the kitchen had a big cart with the food trays, so I had to step out of line to get out of his way. And a guy got in front of me, and I'm like, hey, I'm in line. You can't step in front of me. I had to move out the way of the guy. You know, the guy, like, I forgot what the guy said, but she was coming through and she was hearing me and him go back and forth. She told the guy, hey, don't let him talk to you like that. And then I'm like, see, now you trying to start stuff between me and this resident. And he bust in front of me as a result of me stepping out of line, so that I forgot his name. At the time, I knew the guy named a staff member. So such and such to get in. I say, I'm gonna let that be known also, you know. It was just them type of stuff that she was doing.
Okay.
She go around her coworkers. I know she talking about me because they would be looking at me. She go around various coworkers and telling them about me filing the complaints. I'm assuming this was a constant thing. I also had a roommate at the time that know about the situation, because I would, if he wasn't there to see it, I would let him know. Oh, there she go again and stuff like that.
So you file these 3 complaints, and then what happens?
So the supervisor, I want to say he's an assistant supervisor or so, of the shelter, or the director of the shelter, David Battles. He comes to me with a notice for transfer, a notice of transfer, which I still have somewhere. I've been looking at different papers, but it's a notice of transfer, and I'm reading it, and it's saying I was stalking, you know. Hold on, let me find it right fast. So this is right here. So it's a notice of transfer, 6/17/2020 on 6/10, 6/11, 6/9. Mr. Bruce engaged in stalking behavior towards 2 different staff members. Now,
Did they name the staff?
not on this one, but through court records. One of them is
Well, you could find it later. So, but they do name it somewhere.
yeah.
Were any of them the female that you were getting into it with? The female staff member?
Yeah, so I don't see the second one, but I'm pretty sure it was. Which
Okay.
was
So what does it mean when they say notice of transfer?
basically I had to leave the facility.
And so what happened?
So I had a certain amount of days to leave. Supposedly they had communicated with another shelter out Southeast 801 East for me to go there. When I called, they didn't know nothing about like me being housed there. Number one. Number two, they have an appeal process, so you can appeal the notice of transfer if you feel as though the transfer wasn't warranted. I wound up obtaining help from Legal Aid for the Homeless of DC, something like that.
Okay.
They filed an appeal on my behalf. And
did you ever end up going to that other facility?
No, I went out there. I wound up getting jumped. I didn't ever go inside. It was nighttime when I got there. I got out there. I wound up getting jumped. A lot of personal property got taken and stuff, I didn't go out. I didn't go in this facility.
And they weren't expecting you to come in, were they?
No.
So where'd you go after you left there?
So I slept on the streets until I got my first of the check money, my SSI money, and I was started staying in a hotel. Whenever the money run out, I go back to staying in the streets. That also was a back and forth thing. I was also staying in hotel every now and then to get out of the even New York Avenue shelter from the stuff that was going on.
So you were homeless again?
Yeah.
For how long?
Oh, so if I left there, the notice of transfer was 6/17/2020, maybe like 15 days. June or July 24th of 2020, I wound up receiving my housing voucher. So
about a month?
yeah.
Now what happened with the appeals process?
So the lawyers that had filed the appeal for me, because I had received my housing voucher, they said they couldn't no longer, like they wouldn't be able to represent me because I guess they only represent homeless, and I wasn't homeless no more because of the voucher. Also, the appeal was supposed to take place like within 15 days or something. It did not. It went like unnoticed, swept under the rug, whatever, for 6 months, I want to say. Out the blue, a judge for the administrative hearing courts, I think it was, wound up calling me and inquiring as to why the case didn't go docketed and stuff. I don't know. I let him know. I don't know. He asked me, was there any emails or anything sent to me letting me know? I'm like, no, it wasn't nothing. Nobody called me, nothing. They didn't find it in their records that I was called or he was even docketed or anything. So he gave me three options. He said, you can either dismiss the case, go forward with the appeal that I supposed to have within that 15 days, 6 months prior, or I can have an evidentiary hearing. I said, well, I'd rather go with the evidentiary hearing, because that appeal, that's supposed to happen over 6 months ago. I think the evidentiary hearing to be better. So I went forward with the evidentiary hearing. I tried to talk to the lawyers who had filed an appeal for me, but they felt as though the case would be moved because I wasn't homeless again and stuff. I was like, hey, the case is not going to be moot. I'm telling you, it's going to be able to go forward, the appeal. They didn't want to go, so I had to represent myself. When we had the hearing and stuff, the evidentiary hearing, we gave time to do evidence. I didn't know it well how to present evidence and stuff like that. I tried to call various lawyers to get help, couldn't receive no help. I went forward. Long story short, the judge ruled in my favor. They had a representative. No witnesses came. The complainant, the person who had said I was stalking, neither one of them came. They had a representative come who wasn't around. She was the lady, like the director of the program and stuff. Like she wasn't there at all. Nothing, don't know nothing.
So they weren't able to prove that you were actually stalking.
Yes.
So you were displaced and homeless for nothing.
Yes.
Wow. And that's where we come in. Dr. Cheney, I'm going to unmute you. I know you have questions. Let's get to your questions. Oh, you can unmute yourself. Dr. Cheney, go ahead.
Mr. Bruce?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello? All right.
Mr. Bruce, I have a couple questions.
All right.
You have a very interesting story because I am always interested in the beginning. Would you be kind enough to share with us? How do you know what you know? What were you doing before homelessness or the shelter?
Prior to homelessness, I was incarcerated. I had been incarcerated for 15 years. While in prison, I studied different laws, civil law, tort law, a little bit of criminal law, because just like what went on in the shelter, it was going on while I was incarcerated. So I had to learn the law. I had people helping me, teaching me the law. I wound up becoming a class member of a class action lawsuit started off as Bacody versus Federal Bureau of Prisons. When Michael Bacody dropped off, it was then Federal Bureau of Prisons, represented by Arnold and Porter Law Firm and the Washington's Lawyers Committee. So that's basically where I got a little bit of knowledge where it comes to filing complaints and stuff from.
Okay. How long were you at that location before you were sort of kicked out?
2000, maybe 3-4 months, probably longer than that.
Okay. Did you find out during that period whether other people have gone through this similar situation? That is, I'm getting, and my term may be very different, but I'm getting that you're basically a whistleblower and you're being retaliated against because you were a whistleblower, that you pretty much spoke truth to power, so to speak, and they're going to get you. Were there other people that you think went through a similar situation?
I would think it probably was. I would think, I mean, like fathers saying that they had stalked or something like that, or you just talking about fathers filing complaints against them and being retaliated?
Right. I am talking about the fact that you followed the rules and the rules were broken and you complained about the broken interactions. That's what I'm talking.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was others. I don't know them, but I'm pretty sure somewhere down the line, stuff like that happened in the past to them.
And you knew about the notion of stalking based on your research in prison, right? You knew how that kind of thing is.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to know is what did the alleged victim state? Basically, you said nothing. What did the woman, God, say? Does she have a list of things that she determines to be stalking?
So they didn't go. So here it is. This is from the courts, what the courts have. So it's the respondent's allegations on June 17, 2020, notice alleges incidents relating to petitioner Antoine Bruce occurring on June 9th, June 10th, and June 11th, 2020. Responded asserts that these alleged actions violate the provisions of the HSRA discussed below. No unusual incident report, UIR, for the allegation relating to June 9th, 2020, and no witnesses on behalf of respondent with direct knowledge of any allegation related to that date testified or provided a statement in the record. Respondent's central allegations are as follows. According to UIR on June 10th, 2021, petitioner allegedly walked behind Anthonique Moore as she was serving lunch in the New York Avenue Men's Shelter cafeteria to get his own utensils when the utensils were already provided for him with the food. When Ms. Moore informed petitioner that he walked back toward her and asked what she said, Ms. Moore allegedly became afraid and did not repeat herself. One additional witness besides Ms. Moore is identified in the UIR. According to a different UIR on June 11, 2021, petitioner allegedly stirred at Anthony Moore for more than 30 minutes as she served lunch in the kitchen at the New York Avenue Men's Shelter. However, the event is listed as lasting 15 minutes with 2 additional witnesses besides Ms. Moore. Neither Ms. Moore nor either of the 2 identified witnesses testified at the evidentiary hearing. Petitioner argues that the allegations are false and that they were filed in retaliation for grievances he had filed prior to the alleged incidents.
So they couldn't prove their case, essentially.
Yeah.
They didn't even bother trying to.
No.
It's extremely suspect. Any more questions, Dr. Cheney?
Mr. What do you overall think about the homeless shelter and your experience there, as far as the DC government reaching out and helping the homelessness population? What do you think about all this?
I've been in several shelters. It's not, it's not good. The most it has its up and down. So shelters, you get food, you have a roof over your head, you have heat, but the downs is that you have staff who abuses residents. They don't know how to deal with individual residents that might suffer from mental health defects. A lot of the rules, policies, and procedures of the shelters are just not handled as it should be. If
you had an opportunity to speak to the DC Council, what would you say to them? To testify about your experience, what would you say to them that could improve the place? Basically what you've just said?
That, and they also they should be wearing body cameras, because camera footage, and it was the same thing like incarceration. I was going to try to file lawsuits and stuff. That's the long story behind that. Body cameras.
But it's really interesting to do the comparative analysis, because you've been in both places and you're able to go ahead.
Oh, so
the body cameras.
Yeah, if body cameras was worn, that'll stop a lot of stuff. At the same time, it would help. It wouldn't fully stop, because, example, in prison, they have what's called use of force teams. Officers put on riot gear for individuals acting hostile or aggressive to extract them from their cell. So they post the whole cameras to record the incidents. But a lot of times, the correctional officers, who's part of the use of force team that's holding the camera, will intentionally aim the camera at a co-worker back area when it's supposed to be aimed at the individual they cell attraction, to prevent recording of stuff like the inmate or prisoner being assaulted. So I'm pretty sure, or I would assume, that type of stuff will go on out here. Like if body cameras was worn by security guards. I'm not saying that the whole shelter staff should wear them, but at least the security guards, I think that would help. And at the same time, they'll try to do stuff to stop the recording from happening. But that probably will help. That way, allegations, it won't just be like a he say, she say. You'll have recorded evidence of what's going on in the shelter.
But the other thing about it, based on what you just said, you can get the kinks out. And maybe nobody has really talked about what you just said, what you just shared, that how they can manipulate. Maybe we get those manipulations out, and then we have some accurate body cam results.
Oh yeah, if I mean, it can help and it can hurt because it all depends on how the justice system will go about it. I mean, come on, if it's an incident going on, then the next and it's being recorded, next thing you know, all you see is blackness. A person can assume, hey, camera covered, something like that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
John, was there anything else, Dr. Cheney?
No, thank you, Mr. Bruce.
Thank you. All right.
John, do you have anything?
Well, I mean, the first thing to throw in to Mr. Bruce, I really appreciate your tenaciousness in dealing with this. I mean, you're in a tough situation to begin, right? Just keeping it going day to day is enough. But you talk about an incident where you go to transfer and you go to the facility and you get jumped and you lose a lot of your stuff and now you're back out on the street. So you're just trying to make it. But you hang on enough to say, yeah, but this is not right. I'm going to stand up for myself. Even when it may feel like the whole world is standing on my neck, to use that, metaphor these days. There's so much on you and you're still saying, no, I'm going to stand up for myself. So, I tip my hat to you just for staying in the ring and jumping in again and pushing the lawyers and going to court yourself and having educated yourself while you were incarcerated to say, well, look, yeah, I may not be able to go and be Perry Mason, but at least I can go and speak my piece and have some sense of how this goes. And so that, first and foremost, I think needs to be said here.
Thank you.
And that's so important. And of course, now I'm glad we get to work with you to help take you to another level with this whole thing. And that's
Tackling the injustice.
well, there it is. Yeah, fighting the injustice, and there's so much here. Again, here's a man trying to make it right day to day. And now the system itself, again, here it is that coming back around to that theme we get into. The system itself is part of what has become his problem.
We're about to get into that. I just want to thank Mr. Bruce for coming on.
Yes, thank you, sir.
I'll be touching base with you tomorrow to discuss what we were talking about. All right.
All right. Yes.
Thank you again so much for coming on and giving us an opportunity to tackle this injustice that you faced. And it's impacted your life. Your life will probably never be the same now moving forward because of what these people have done to you. Yeah. And we're going to make sure and fight with you and for you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for having me on and allowing me to tell my story.
All righty, my man.
Continued success.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All righty. All righty. 1 second. All right. So now we get to the injustice. We have a young man who was incarcerated, and there's a tendency for people to treat people who are incarcerated differently. There's that stigmatism that someone came out of jail, and so now therefore they are less than. So that's one strike. So he's a target already. Then the second strike is he's homeless. People tend to look down on people who are homeless, not knowing the backstory. All they know is they're homeless, therefore they're less than me, and I can treat them however I want to treat them. And then he's a minority. So he has a lot of things going against him. And then we defined stalking early. So we know that in order for someone to realistically bring a stalking charge against someone, there has to be some sort of fact that would let them know that they either, one, knew that their behavior was causing them fear, or two, it was so obvious anybody in that situation would be fearful. Again, just because you're walking behind someone does not give you the right to say that this person is stalking me, right? They may literally be going in your same direction every day. So apparently they had nothing, which is why they didn't go to the judiciary hearing. And they was just seriously doing the other word that we talked about, retaliation.
Retaliation, sure.
And now they have a cause of action. But where is the injustice in this situation? Well, first, Arlene, Dr. Cheney, let me talk to you. What did you gather from his story? What struck you the most?
That he was retaliated against for telling what was going on in the place, as far as the rules were concerned.
And what made you think that he was being retaliated against?
You know, when they said that you're no longer welcome here and they're kicking him out of the shelter or allegedly transferring him to a place, and the other place has not a clue that he was scheduled to come there. It's just kicking him out in the cold.
And the reason for doing it, right? Maybe if he had gotten into a fight and they said, this guy is really violent, he broke someone's jaw, but they come up with some crazy off the wall story of, oh, he's stalking people. I think that is a real red flag as to they just wanted him out of there. You think?
He's creating a problem. Yeah, he's creating a problem.
Yeah. He's a
Whatever they
troublemaker.
do,
You have to get rid of him.
yeah, that's
A rabble
exactly what he
rouser.
is. Get rid of him. Yeah, and they're not used to that.
And the
Or
irony,
they could be used to it.
well, maybe, I'm sure they are, but on some level, the irony that it's the New York Avenue Catholic Charities shelter for people without homes,
Yeah.
and this is how you're treating people. I mean, you're a charity, a religious charity set up to help people who are struggling. Now, I get it. They probably don't have tons of money, and their staff is probably not the best well paid. And yes, sometimes you get what you pay for. And as you said, sometimes people, even though you're working at a place that's supposed to be helping people, well, maybe you are looking down on somebody because they were formerly incarcerated or they're homeless, even though you're working at a shelter for people without homes. And now it's that sort of thing. Well, give somebody with a little bit of power, and now they want to abuse it. I mean, there's part of the injustice of, how much further down does this guy have to be? He's living at a home. All right, he's not under a bridge, but he's, and then they kick him out and essentially shove him under a bridge.
And
But
this is the part that just eats me up, is when you have these people who they're supposed to be there to protect you. In other words, they're supposed to be exacting justice, but they're the ones actually denying justice. It's not, and this is why I've said it before, it's not the boy in the hoodie that's dangerous. It's the man with the suit. These are people who could cause the most damage in human beings' lives. And they're doing it. And these are the people that we're fighting. I had to file a complaint against the DC judge this week because of the amount of injustice she was exacting in this case. And I'm tempted to say her name, but I'm not going to. But this is what eats us up. The people who are placed in positions to help are hurting people. And we're fighting these people in black robes, in supervisor positions. We're fighting them because they're not doing what they're supposed to do. Not only are they not doing what they're supposed to do, but they're actively hurting people. These people who work for him, they came up with some back alley story to put him out back on the streets. I'm sorry, but this kind of stuff just irks the living daylight out of me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's easier to let the infractions or whatever go on because now I don't have to do anything. If I take this guy's complaint seriously, if I enforce the rules, now I have to do my job and I have to, I have to get in the middle of something. It's easier just to make it go away because then I can just ignore everything because and it's not an issue. And that therein lies part of the problem, right? He's just trying to follow the rules. Don't take my stuff. Don't wash in the wrong places. Don't do this. Don't do that. You're not supposed to be doing this stuff. And they're supposed to enforce the rules. Otherwise, get rid of the rules and be done with it. But, you know.
So
Yeah,
in one
it's-
sentence, what would you say the injustice is?
Well, in one sentence, the injustice is the whole system that's set up to protect the least of these among us is exacting punishment on them. There's the injustice.
And it's the individuals in the system.
Yeah. And yet, but oftentimes the system itself isn't set up. I mean, maybe again, you could say it's a series of individuals that can't respond to it, can't react well to it. That somehow they had the system where some employees got pissed off because this guy's wanting us to do our jobs, and now he's filing complaints to our boss. So we make up this stuff, and our boss, let's say the boss doesn't really know this battle fellow.
Let's start with the first employee. Let's start at the person who he complained about and said, look, he's washing his genitals in the sink. If this was a person who was thoughtful, caring, cared about people, cared about the position, they would have said, look, you cannot do this anymore. Don't do that. And it would have stopped right there. But they didn't do anything. Because they didn't do anything, he complained to their superior. And then the superior now, then they could have said, look, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. Let's fire. We're going to fire you. But apparently that superior didn't do anything, but maybe slapped the person on the hand a few times. And then after the employee was getting complaint after complaint against them, they took matters into their own hands and they filed this bogus complaint. But it all starts, the injustice started with those two particular security guards who were going to individually name in the complaint because they didn't do their job. They was negligent. They were spiteful. They were intentional. Those are the bad apples.
And then there's no due process. I don't know in this kind of a situation exactly what that would look like, but he gets this notice of transfer. There's no clear due process. I mean, there's nothing internal there. Well, the employee says, we think he did bad, so you have to go. And that's the end of it. Well, he can sort of appeal it, but clearly the mechanism isn't that obvious or that easy.
And that's something that we're going to look into, because if it turns out that it is more thorough and they just didn't do it, then but if it's not, you're right. Then that's where we say, look, there's a glitch in this thing. If someone was acting up, say he was indeed stalking, the way your rules are set up, all you have to do is just give him a letter and say, go here. And no one's checking to see whether this other place has an opening. No one's doing any sort of, if that is the case, then we need to raise that to the attention of DC and say, look, fix this.
And if there's a real truth to this, let's say again, let's go with your hypothetical. He really is stalking these people. Well, now you've kicked the can to someone else. You're not really, are they aware now, this other shelter, that this guy is stalking employees? You really want this guy in your facility?
Right.
In other words, there are all kinds of glitches and problems.
Which leads me to think that something is not right. Maybe they didn't transfer him. Maybe they just kicked him out totally. Because you're right. Why would they put somebody, whether a rapist or a stalker, why don't they just say, okay, we don't want you here, now go over here and do your stalking and raping?
Now it's not my problem. And now
right.
It's their problem.
That makes no sense. So when we dig deeper into this story, I think we're going to find a lot more negligence on the part of these employees.
And then what happened to his case? Like all of a sudden, 15 days, he's supposed to have a hearing and that never happens.
Right.
Clearly that responsibility wasn't on him.
Right.
So where did that go? Did somebody trash it, bury it?
And a lot of that happened with COVID. He said that took place in June 2020. A lot of that probably happened because a lot of cases was just pushed to the side because everything was shut down for a while.
Maybe it did just sort of innocently fall through the cracks, but it does at least raise the question, you know. That all we wanted was this guy to be gone. We really didn't want to have to show up in front of a judge on this thing. So burying this thing is fine with us because he's just gone, and that's what we wanted. Who knows? Yeah, we know where that sort of thing has happened. So, you know, I don't even want to think about it, but there it is. Again, that possibility is there. And I'm really disappointed in the lawyers. I understand that, yeah, you're counsel for the homeless, but you filed the case.
Right.
It's kind of like once you started down the road, even though the guy's circumstances changed, he's still your client, you filed the case. It's not like we're talking a multi-million-dollar complex litigation that's going to go on for 10 years. Just take the guy through the hearing and get it done. I mean, that's just disappointing. I don't know that I'm going to call that an injustice, but it just seems like their hands are bureaucratically tied. Well, you're not homeless anymore, so now we just jettison you to the winds. It's like, really?
Yeah.
You know.
Dr.
Well,
Cheney,
look.
you have the last word.
Yeah. Well, let's say the attorneys proceeded with the case, continued with the case. What would he have gotten out of? What was he getting out of it?
What do
You
you
get
mean?
what I'm asking?
Well, if he wins the
He's-
hearing about the notice of transfer,
Right? He was what?
the hearing was about the notice of transfer, right? He was appealing
Right.
that. So
Mhm.
if he wins that, I guess they can't force him to leave. Now that puts you in the unpleasant situation in any shelter context where, yeah, you can stay, but now of course you have enemies. Of course, I guess he had them before, so he could at least choose to stay if he wanted to. I don't know that there was any other win there for him other than that, but that's
Mhm.
that
The
he would
other
have
thing
had.
that I want to, right. The other thing that I want to add is I really think it's unfortunate that some of us go through trials and tribulation and we have a chance to tell the story the way this person just told his story. And I'm thinking that the media should get a hold of this story and really tell what's going on in these shelters.
Yeah, that's going to be a topic of
Because if
another
we
show
with a
because
body cam, I mean, I think it's great when he was talking about the body cam, because with the case that we had with the Walmart, the body cam revealed a lot for me. And one of the things that I was picking up with the body cam, based on the interactions, is that you wear the body cam so long, it becomes a part of you, and you don't realize that you're saying stuff on the body cam that can incriminate you. And I thought that would was an interesting point for me with the body cam when I was looking at the interaction between the policeman and the security guard at Walmart. Because nowhere in the world, if they had remembered that the body cam was on, certain things would not have been said on that body cam.
if you all want to know what she's talking about, we did a show where a young lady was arrested in Walmart and there was a body cam. You could go back, I think it's episode 3 or 4 with Athena Phillips. And that's true, Dr. Cheney. I think the body cam in that situation, getting the media to take some of these cases, and again, we're going to have to do a show on the media because they pick and choose what what stories they air, and it's all based on how much popularity it's going to bring to them. So that there's an injustice in that too. But yeah, you're right. And this is a sad situation. It deserves airtime. We're putting him on the air. We're telling his story. For those who like these type of things, there's the red button, subscribe. We have more stories coming in. Share this video with your friends. Get this young man's story out. There's an injustice going on in homeless shelters that many people don't know about. Get the word out. Start talking about it. That's how you make change. You also, as a listener, you play a part in this fight for injustice. Don't remain silent. Speak up. When you see something going on, speak up. Thank you all for watching. Mr. Salatti, thank you as always.
Mr. Phillips, indeed, my pleasure. I look forward to the next step with this wonderful client there, Mr. Bruce, and seeing where we can take this for him and hopefully give him a leg up. And who knows, maybe that this is something that will affect him for the rest of his life. Let's hope that what we do for him means that this affects him in a positive way. For the rest.
Dr.
That
Cheney.
somehow maybe he'll end up going to law school or become a paralegal, or it'll give him the ability and incentive to, because clearly he's a smart guy. He's, again, tenacious. He's patient. There are real possibilities if a little bit is set up for him, and hopefully what we're doing for him will help create some of that foundation. So I look forward to the next steps with him.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Cheney, thank you for coming on and sharing with us.
Okay.
And we'll see you all again next week.
Until next time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching our video. For experienced legal services in Washington, D.C., Alabama, and Washington State, visit our website at remuslaw.com or call us at 1-833-329-1799.
When someone goes through a divorce, they lose their best friend. They lose their house. They lose their children. Any time away from your child is a loss. Let's face it, divorce kills. The average cost in the United States for a divorce is $13,000. It's not uncommon for divorce to cost well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. At Remus, we take into consideration you, the divorcing spouse, your property, your money, and your children. We assist clients in directing them to therapy, mentorship programs, savings. We mitigate the cost of divorce to keep your expenses down. We look out for the client holistically.
I came to Remus Law seeking a divorce. Solon listened to me. I told him my story. When he mailed me a copy of the complaint, which summarized my story, he was able to say exactly what I had been feeling for so many years. When my husband was served with the complaint, he came to me with tears in his eyes. He said he didn't know this is how I was really feeling. He asked if we could try again.
At Remus, we do all that we can for our clients.
Wait a little bit longer. Wait a little, we'll be coming around again. 'Cause you know we're stronger than we were when you and I began. I don't know what's harder, holding on or letting go. I don't know if we oughta, know if we oughta, no, I don't. I don't know where I'm going, but I know it's gonna be good. I don't know where I'm going, but I know it's gonna be good.
The lessons taught in the adventures of Uncle Billy and Ross are lesson that adults learn late in life. Some never learn it. I will recommend every parent, every young person, every adult read this book. But more importantly, apply the lessons.